We are joined now by Dr. David Chow at Pro Football Doc on Twitter. And we have arrived, Dr. Chow, at Super Bowl week. So let's start kind of breaking down this situation. COVID has been the overarching threat of the entire NFL season. Opening weekend of wild card action, Stefanski and Kevin Stefanski, the head coach of the Browns, and some of the players on the Browns had some COVID issues, but knock on wood, since that point, the NFL playoffs, I think you can tell me if I'm wrong, have been pretty free of COVID, and we haven't really had major issues.
Yeah, that's correct, and it actually makes sense. Look, COVID hasn't gone away in society yet. Yes, vaccines are starting to roll out, but really what it comes down to is, A, a numbers game, and B, more diligence. The numbers game, because instead of 32 teams playing, obviously we're down to 2. So right there, you have a 1/16th chance mathematically of someone testing positive from before. And now you're inside the window here where if anyone tested positive, they would automatically be ruled out of the Super Bowl, period, end of discussion. This goes from coaches to staff to players, and no one wants that to happen. This is the moment that you've been waiting for all season. So understandably, I think teams have already been on lockdown. Ironically, you might say that Tampa has the easier time because they're at home, but in some ways that's more difficult, right? Whereas the Chiefs, can really definitely lock down a little more easier and be in a regular routine without the fanfare that's in Tampa. So that'll be interesting to see and watch. But I'm quite sure all teams are being very, very careful. Access, especially when you get down anyways to a Super Bowl, even though it's late week, security is pretty tight. But I'm sure it's even locked down more than typical because no one wants to test positive and miss the big game.
No doubt at all. All right, let's dive into the actual health status of both teams. So an extra week to get ready, to get healthy. As we work towards this game taking place on Sunday, let's start with the Chiefs, who are the team from the AFC that will be traveling in. How would you assess the overall health status of the Chiefs, and who are some players that maybe fans should be paying attention to who are thinking about how to bet this game or analyze maybe some Super Bowl prop bets? How would you assess that?
Well, first of all, all attention is on 15, right? Number 15. And Patrick Mahomes, concussion or not, that issue is behind him. The issue of the turf toe will not be. There's no way you can be completely healed from a turf toe. When he plays in the Super Bowl, it'll be 4 weeks. And there even is some rumors or reports of potential surgery after the season. Don't know if that's true or not, but the carbon fiber plate, the tape, the game day injection, he's been listed at full practice so far. Of course, he's going to play. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back, should finally get back to where he's really a regular contributor, so that might change things a little bit. Sammy Watkins, I think, is a little iffy on his calf still, but the way that they've schemed with the quick underneath passes instead of the deep balls, he might be phased out anyways a little bit, but the attention for the Chiefs has to be on their offensive line. Look, there's been a lot of word out there that they're missing both tackles. They've missed Mitchell Schwartz since like week 6, and that's key. And now they're down Eric Fisher, who tore his Achilles. Yes, it's a big deal. They lost both tackles, but I could argue that it's even a bigger deal than that because of the downstream effect. With Eric Fisher down, backup right tackle Mike Remmers flips from the right side to the left side. Right guard backing up for Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who opted out beginning of the season. Andrew Wiley now kicks out to right tackle. And Stefan Wisniewski, who was released by the Steelers in November and signed with the Chiefs, comes into play right guard. And obviously Kelechi Osemele was lost early season. So you could argue from what the Chiefs drew up as their starting 5, 4 of the 5 are going to be different. Number 2 left tackle, number 2 left guard, number 3 right guard, and number 3 right tackle. So that's going to be something key to watch.
All right, so the Chiefs side of the equation, what about, and by the way, I want to get your read from a health perspective on the big trade, which obviously we've been talking about a great deal. You don't see happen very often, 2 starting quarterbacks being flipped in the NFL. But what would you say about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers from a health perspective?
Well, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are heading in the right direction. Ronald Jones should probably be the 1A back, and Leonard Fournette back to the 1B, where he's more the pass catcher. Obviously Alex Kappa, the right guard, is still out with the ankle fracture, and Vita Vea returning is big for their defensive line. And I think this game might be won or lost on the defensive line of the Bucs with JPP, Shaq Barrett, and Vita Vea. Can they get after Mahomes, et cetera? But what to watch for defensively is the safeties. Antoine Winfield Jr. should be back from the ankle. However, big question mark with Jordan Whitehead with his left shoulder. My fear is that he actually tore his pec and is putting off surgery till after the Super Bowl and trying to make a valiant attempt to play through that. So that's what's to watch for the Bucs. Of course, Antonio Brown, Brown, question mark. Look, don't be scared. He was listed as doubtful, but that's if the game were yesterday on Sunday, right? They give a projection on Friday. There'll be a new projection this coming Friday, and I think it'll end up being a coaching decision if Arians wants to use him or use Scotty Miller still in the slot.
Is there a way that you have noticed that teams discuss injuries in Super Bowl week that is different than they might during the regular season or even during the playoffs? Have you picked up on any sort of subtle differences in terms of the way that they use the injury report?
Well, there's no question it's unusual because there's injury reports in this down week, right? And there's game projections for a game that doesn't exist yesterday, right? And
yes.
So it's a little bit different. And, it's unusual how teams do it. And I'm not saying anyone is right or wrong. Let's say what they did with Antonio Brown listed him as doubtful, or the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes saying he's full practice. Now, that may be true, he's full practice, but there's no way he's 100% with that turf toe. So I think the key is to read between the lines in terms of what it is. There is a variation of what's legal for teams to do, and I think they're all doing it the right way, but there's some variation of interpretation. And heck, I'm sure we'll get to it as we talk about Goff and how they listed his thumb, so to speak, towards the end of the season.
Okay, we had you mentioned Jared Goff there, which is an interesting segue into the big trade. Matthew Stafford traded to the Rams. Jared Goff traded to the Lions. Matthew Stafford has been a warrior in terms of the number of games that he's been willing to play through. 33 years old, the Rams are giving up a lot for him. And I know, look, a 33-year-old in the NFL is a lot different than a 23-year-old. But based on Matthew Stafford's injury history, is there anything that would give you pause currently about his ability to play at a high level for the next 4 or 5 years?
Actually, no. And he's had a lot of injuries throughout time, but he's as tough as they come, probably right behind Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers has a long streak, and Matthew Stafford has rivaled him in playing through a bunch of different things. And I think the trade inadvertently can be influenced a little bit by the successes of older quarterbacks, including Tom Brady, right?
Right.
I mean, you look at 33. I think 10 years ago, you'd say 33. We're not trading for someone who's 33. Now you look at Tom Brady and you say, well, maybe this guy can play another 10 years. We'll see, right? And so it's a different trade value there. But yes, the trades cannot be official yet because the new league year hasn't started. And even when that happens, there will have to be a physical pass for Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff for it to be official, but I don't see that to be an issue on either side.
And the Jared Goff thumb, to the extent that it was still a lingering issue at the end of the season, it'll be a non-issue by the time he gets into minicamp and as he progresses with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I think it's a complete non-issue. Look, if they fail him over the thumb, that means they changed their mind for some reason.
On the trade, which there's been some people who have said, hey, like he has to pass physical, where suddenly the Lions decide maybe we don't want to take this big this big Jared Goff contract as well.
Yeah, and here's the thing that the trade told me. Look, Clay, you follow it, and for OutKick, I was wrong earlier this season. When Week 16, Jared Goff broke his thumb and dislocated, he played the rest of the game, the whole fourth quarter, without any taper support. After 3 pins, 12 days later, I was sure that he was ready to start and would start. And he didn't. The nod was to John Wolford. And I was saying this doesn't make medical sense. He was ready to start. Was he 100%? Maybe not. But he was ready to play the game. As evidenced about halfway through the first quarter, Wolford went out and Goff played 3.5 quarters reasonably. You can argue how effectively, but he certainly finished the game. And the key there is the Rams didn't activate Blake Bortles that day. In other words, they went into the game with Wolford and Goff. If Goff was iffy with his thumb, that's quite a risk in a playoff game to go into it with 1.5 quarterbacks, knowing that the hits the quarterbacks take. So that told me his thumb was fine. And that brought into question, and we talked about it on the OutKick podcast, it's on my timeline, where I said, look, the whole topic that next Monday was hiding behind health. And my assumption was the Rams and with the Goff situation, were hiding behind the thumb a little bit. What they were really saying is Wolford and Goff are a lot closer than we think in terms of evaluation. And with this trade, you can see where it's all come true, where Goff clearly, somehow, somewhere along the way, fell out of favor with the Rams and Sean McVay. And it wasn't the thumb, why he didn't get that wild card start against the Seahawks.
Yeah, there's no doubt at all. We're talking to Dr. David Chow at Pro Football Doc. I don't think I asked you or gave you an opportunity to talk about Phillip Rivers when he announced that he had retired. I think I inadvertently forgot to give you. You wrote a great piece at OutKick, and you just referenced him a little bit here, talking about Matthew Stafford and how tough that certainly, in your experience, Phillip Rivers was. For people out there who maybe have not had the experience, which is the vast majority, to know what Phillip Rivers is like, how would you describe him, and what did he play through? How tough of a guy was Phillip Rivers compared to, I know you deal with a lot of tough guys on a day-to-day basis, but did he even stand out even more than many others for his toughness?
Well, there's certainly others like him, but he certainly was very tough. I mean, after he tore his ACL in the final game in the RCA Dome, he knew he was playing that AFC Championship game. There was no doubt in his mind. I mean, he peppered me 17 times on that flight back home saying, let's go get this done and make sure I can play. He has so much resolve, and we talk about this in the OutKick article, and I really urge people to read it, not for clicks, but it gives you a different side of Phillip Rivers, not just the dadgummit bantering on the field or his on-field accomplishments, behind the scenes, everything from him allowing his daughters to paint his toenails, from him, literally walking off the bus with the torn ACL and the meniscus behind the backs of like 5,000 people welcoming us back to the Chargers practice facility because he was so impatient. He was on the third bus, the first player's bus. He got off early with his bags and walked into the side of the parking lot to get his MRI earlier than anything else because he just couldn't wait to get going. And literally 5,000 fans, if they turned their back, they would have seen their starting quarterback. And the final thing that I have to say is he's so meaningful to San Diego. Like, he really was the only guy from the organization that reached out. Not only did he continue to live in San Diego and commute by customized van and study film up to LA and back and left his family, but when given a local award in 2019, he made it a point of showing up, and you should click on that OutKick article, and Rich Ornberger, a former teammate, posted the clip of how emotional it was, how he personally thanked the city of San Diego for all his time there, and emotionally said, look, one day I just hope you in San Diego look out there and see me and can say, that's my quarterback. I mean, he's just that special of a guy. Whether he makes the Hall of Fame or not, I hope he does. The on-field accolades, I think, are well documented. But the man behind that, I think, is something that people should get to know.
I'm fascinated by how he played with a torn ACL. Like, explain for layman's terms how that is possible to even do.
Well, first of all, I'm so naive. At the time when I was in the NFL being the head team position, I didn't talk to any media. I didn't read any of the stuff. And like now that I'm on the media side, it is unfathomable to me that in the 2008 AFC Championship game, we hid the fact that he had surgery and a torn ACL, and nowadays it just wouldn't happen. Look, how did he do it? First of all, he literally said to me, and he didn't know how true it would be, saying, look, I don't want to miss a chance to play in the Super Bowl. I'll take take the risks, do what we need to do. I don't know when I'll get back here again. And he was saying that hypothetically. It turned out to be true. It was his only chance in the AFC Championship game. So I know he's glad that he played. But, you know, we had a little medical tricks, did a few things. We scoped him, we drained his knee, all this sort of stuff. Toughness, used the brace. But let's be fair, as tough as Phillip Rivers is, it's different if you're LT playing through the ACL. It's different if you're Lamar Jackson playing through the ACL. Phillip, of all people, wasn't the most mobile guy in the world, to be fair. And that's one of the reasons how he was able to tough it out and do that.